if you start to inject lies into the freedom movement, which are a group of very, very free minds, you're not doing the freedom movement any service at all. I think where we just have to be a little bit careful, and this is where what I'm saying is when one ends up forwarding something that isn't true, you just have to very quickly correct it. Maybe, let's say, maybe somebody wearing a mask somewhere might save somebody's life. Personally, I think it's unlikely, but let's say it will. What I can assure you is keeping the economies of Earth shut down is going to cost people their lives. So, Real Truth says, I've spent thousands of hours fighting this scam. You know, Real Truth, you don't need to do that. You just need to indicate and tell people to think for themselves, to look for themselves, and then communicate and place truth onto the communication lines of the world that you do know is true. And this is one of the things that, you know, one of the reasons why I always go back to Dianetics. If you really want to know the truth, Dianetics is one of the most incredible tools that allows you to tell the difference between truth and lies. It is so extraordinary. This book, by the way, in the hands of the freedom movement, is a secret weapon. And I'll tell you this, I've done many things to piss off the deep state in my life. I presented a cure for drug addiction, which is the last thing that the deep state wants. I've presented cures for depression. But the thing that pisses the deep state off more than anything else, and I swear to God, this is a fact, is me holding this book here right now and telling each and every one of you to go out and buy this book as if your life depended on it. Because there is information in this book which will help you survive, and I know that because I have read it. I read it in 1990, and I have read it many times since, and I use the information in this book every single day of my life. And that little communication, by the way, okay, pisses off the deep state far, far more than me supporting Trump, far, far more than me telling you that, in my view, pushing masks is counterproductive. This is the motherlode, and I'm telling you, start with this book, and I'll tell you, it's an adventure, and your life will never be the same again. And treat it as an adventure. That's what Mr. Hubbard said. Treat it as an adventure, and may your life never be the same again. That's actually a direct quote. So, there we go. Stephanie Trenton says, lol, I love your teacher. Kaither says, what was Mike Rinder muddled about? You know, when a person's in a muddle, even they don't know what they're in a muddle about, but he's in a muddle. If you want accurate information about Scientology, and I can't say this enough times, simply go to lronhubbard.com or Scientology.org, and it's all there. And it just is, to a well-intentioned person, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It just basically splits down the middle. People who love wars, like seeing people depressed, like seeing people addicted to drugs, and profit from them, hate Scientology. People who like breaking up families, hate Scientology. People who are against wars, would like to see people happy and smiling and doing well, don't like it when their friends get hooked on drugs, would rather see the end of wars and create wonderful friendships and have fun with friends. This type of person loves Scientology. And basically, that's where the rubber meets the road. You know, end of war creation of friends. That is really the dichotomy on which causes the global expansion of Scientology, which has expanded tremendously, even in the last few months. So, and the next few months are going to be very interesting indeed. So, we're now talking about various different other things. I've, of course, gone off subject again. I've just done it, haven't I? Could you give us a rundown on Scientology, please? Yes, I can. If you are against wars, you're going to like Scientology. If you are pro-wars, you're going to hate Scientology. If you like creating friendships, and if you like, Stephen Hickson says, the divine dichotomy. Absolutely right. That is the divine dichotomy. QQQ. Thank you so much, QQQ, for retweeting me the whole time. John, I think I have to read this book because this sounds amazing. Yeah, read it. I challenge each and every one of you to read it. I really do. I really do. Roland Hill says, thoroughly enjoying this, John. Thank you for doing this. Now Ian Suave says, no one is pro-wars, are they? Okay, Ian, good point. Let's just examine that. Let's use a slightly more benign example. Let's say somebody has a fireworks company and Maurice Fonson, or whoever our Prime Minister is, comes along and says, right, we're cancelling November the 5th and we're cancelling New Year's Eve, no fireworks. Well, what's going to happen to the person that owns the firework company? He's not going to be very happy because he can't use up this year's stock of fireworks, so next year he can't manufacture because, of course, the bulk of fireworks, in this country anyway, gets sold on November the 5th and New Year's Eve. They all work to those dates. You know, the odd birthday and wedding for sure, but principally November the 5th and New Year's Eve, that's when people use fireworks. Now, take wars. You see, if you're in the tank manufacturing business, or if you are in the missile manufacturing business, or the Kalashnikov manufacturing business, you manufacture Russian machine guns. If there are no wars, what happens to your profits? Now you may say, well, listen, I sell treacle tarts and crumpets and cream teas in Cornwall. I would never sell a missile. And certainly I wouldn't, and I don't think you would either, Ian. But there are some people who profit from chaos. And so those people really rather like a ding-dong down in Africa, because what they can do is they can sell a bunch of landmines down. You know, this is what Princess Diana was pointing out, of course. These landmines are probably not a very good idea. So I think that perhaps if you take a look at it, you might see that some people might be pro-wars. You're not. And the thing is, Ian says, military-industrial complex. Yeah, I know they're pro-war. Okay, good, Ian. Well done. Top of the class. Ian was saying, us normal population people. Okay, fair enough. Well, even within that, you have people who work, let's say, in a job, and maybe they'd get fired if there were no tanks made, you see. So people find all sorts of ways to justify these things. But basically, no, I think on the whole, the average person, you, me, most of the people watching this, no, we don't like wars, do we? And that's why most people, when they find out what Scientology is, now of course what you have to realize is that Scientology, to my estimation, I reckon the deep state spends about 800 million a year writing silly things about Scientology. They write silly things about me. They write silly things. Even they wrote something horrible about my 5-year-old son, Caspian. You know, that's a bit sick, really. to write something horrible about him because his father's a Scientologist. Of course, today, being a Scientologist is the last remaining subject on which one is allowed to be bigoted if you are The Guardian. You know, The Guardian yesterday wrote that John Mappin, Scientologist. What if it had said, John Mappin, Jew? I mean, isn't that religious bigotry? I mean, Scientology is legally acknowledged. It's legally acknowledged by the Supreme Court of England that indeed it is in fact a religious movement and a religion. Am I not free to be a Scientologist? Or do I have to wear a yellow star, according to The Guardian, to announce the fact to the world that in fact, yes, indeed, or a pink star or a green star, let's say, to announce the fact to the world that I'm a Scientologist? Is that, fair? Or is that actually religious bigotry? Is that intolerance? See, I say it's intolerance. I mean, I could have any one of 57 genders, and if anybody said diddly squat about that, or they could say, make a peep about the fact that I consider myself to be one of the many varieties of genders that now exist. And if anybody was to say a word about that in The Guardian, they'd be for the bloody high jump. But apparently it's open season on Scientology. Apparently that's okay. So I ask you, is that okay? You see? Andrew Allsworth goes, at least you know you are upsetting somebody somewhere. You are bloody right, Andrew. Bloody right. And, at least we all know we're alive when The Guardian starts doing their... It was such an amateur hatchet job. It was actually hilarious. Shaquille says, how do you reconcile being a Christian while practicing Scientology? No problem at all, because the truth cannot conflict with the truth. And all I'm interested in is the truth in Christianity. And I find that is incredibly comforting, and the love of our Lord Jesus Christ is something amazing. It's a miracle to have received his grace and to experience that. And then Scientology, of course. There's never been a conflict between Hubbard and Christianity, the founder of Scientology and Christianity. So, yes, it's a great thing. Scientology strengthens my Christian faith, and my Christian faith strengthens my understanding of Scientology. David Osborne says, it's amazing how truth and true freedom can create haters. It is, David, and the key to it, the key to it is to flourish and prosper and to continue to advocate total freedom for me, total freedom for you, and total freedom for everybody in the world. And if we keep pushing the message of total freedom, what actually happens is the suppressive elements go completely and utterly cuckoo. Kitty Goris says, great answer, John. Anne Hinn says, it is religious bigotry. It is religious bigotry. What about the violence and abuse that has been reported by so many, you see, there you go, escaped Scientology? There's no escaping needed, because there's actually very little joining that goes on. You're simply studying a subject. There's various different groups you can join. But this is really excommunicated from their friends, families are destroyed. This is absolute. I mean, I've been a Scientologist for 30 years. Listen, some people have, and I know I have, distant relatives, not immediate relatives, but distant relatives that are annoying. And sometimes I've chosen, not to speak with an annoying person. And that's my right, not to speak with an annoying person. And that's your right too. I'm sure there are people who you prefer not to speak to. No one has the right, to communicate to you if you don't want to communicate to them. Even on my own social media, if someone is incessantly rude, I say, well, thank you very much. But, I have a right, you see, to communicate, not to communicate. Here's the thing. It's very, very dangerous talking to somebody that, let's say, considers that they used to be a Scientologist and now no longer are, it's about as reliable, the information that they have, I'm not saying it's all not true, but I'm saying it's about as reliable as information from an ex-husband. You know, if you're a woman and you've been married to somebody, and then somebody goes and speaks to your ex-husband about you, and then makes a judgment about you based on what your ex-husband says, this is not such a useful. You see, Riggs says haters will hate. You don't have to take it. Yeah. Yeah, you see, somebody hears. You see, you've had your nose in all the black propaganda. I happen to know the fellow, and unreliable source. Sheila Pratt, John, do you consider yourself a Christian? If so, how did you come to have an Islamic wedding? Hope you don't mind me asking. Good question. My mother-in-law was a Muslim, or is a Muslim. And out of respect for her, because I see no conflict between Islam and Christianity, between the truth in Islam and between the truth in Christianity, and out of respect for my wife, but really more out of respect for my mother-in-law, I could see that it would make her very, very happy for us to have an Islamic ceremony and a wedding in Kazakhstan. And so I agreed to that because, and it was a very beautiful thing. And actually, when you really look into it, there is no conflict at all between Christianity and Islam, if you really, really look into it. And it's been my pleasure to arrive at that understanding. So that's how that happened, Sheila. Yeah. Now, see, Shakil agrees with me on that. You're right, there's no conflict between Islam and Christianity. Sheila says, thank you for answering. There really isn't. And actually, I will tell you this. There's a piece of information in Scientology, and this is something that all of you, whether you're a Scientologist or not, will find very, very useful. It's called the third-party law. And if you go to Scientology.tv, there is a film on there called the third-party law. And you will find that where you have two human beings that are not getting on, and maybe they used to get on, there's always a hidden third party. And you'll find that with your relationships. You'll find that with your relationships between groups. If you say, well, there's this Jewish guy and then there's this Arab guy and they're not getting on. Well, there's always a hidden third party. And this probably was one of the most priceless gifts and discoveries that Mr. Hubbard made. And I would give that to you, obviously through him, this evening. And if there's one thing I could teach you this evening, is that we have been lied to about the other fellow. You see, Shakil, this is an interesting question. What is the shape of the earth according to Scientology? Is it a plane or a ball? Now, the whole essence, Shakil, you've been asking some interesting questions, the whole essence of Scientology is it doesn't tell you what to think. It challenges you to think for yourself, and it gives you the tools with which you become able to think for yourself. So it doesn't matter what Scientology thinks about the shape of the world. What matters is what do you think is the shape of the world, you see?